Hello and welcome back to Concealing Historica Imperialis. I am Decurio Iomhar, and once again I am joined by my good friend, Chef Tekonis, for another episode of our Lorecast. Say hi, Chef.
How's it going?
Awesome. In this episode, we will be discussing Imperial prehistory all the way up to the Great Crusade. But first, if you like what we do, consider joining us on patreon.com/concealing historic imperialis. We got a lot of things going on over there, but don't take my word for it. Go check it out yourself. Thanks in advance. Before we get into this, how you doing, man? It's been a minute.
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, no, you definitely got the vibe of like eyes are tired, and I appreciate you doing this. I know really you have a very busy schedule, so it's always nice so you put in your 2 cents for me.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So with that out of the way, allow me to throw down a bit of a disclaimer. Like with our War in Heaven episode, there is quite a bit of speculative content we will be covering. Please understand that I understand and enjoy the ride. Let's begin. Where we last left off, the old ones were killed off by the enslaver plague following the War in Heaven, and the Necron overthrew the Catan before going dormant as the Eldar and Kork started closing in. Following this, the Eldar then began wiping out the warlike Kork as the green hooligans no longer had something holding the leash, and subsequently fell back on their biological imperative and got to cropping.
So much crumping.
So much cropping. Surprisingly, the Eldar came out victorious and left the Kork defeated and scattered. And thus they became the orcs because they were just beat that badly. With the old ones dead and gone, the Catan imprisoned and the Necron asleep, and in hiding, this left a power vacuum that the Eldar filled, right? So there's just a lot of big players no longer out in the field, and now it's just left to the Eldar. Once consolidating their power, the Eldar went to work building a galaxy-wide empire and flourished largely uncontested. Along the way, they encountered the many minor creations of the old ones, including an ape-like tree people in a beautiful blue world. For whatever reason, the Eldar decided the funny buggers could stay breathing, eat their bananas, and throw poo at each other. I mean, after all, what's the worst thing that could happen? It's not like these monkey would be responsible for a grimdark future where there is only war, right?
Yeah, right?
Right?
Oh,
Um,
no way. That's crazy.
it's crazy. Well, if it sounds familiar, guess what? It is.
Mm.
See, these little silly little apes are us, and like the friends we gained along the way, the poosling stays with us forever. Yeah. Whether the poo is quite literally fecal matter, hurtful words, or weapons of planetary destruction, humanity hasn't much changed in the time since its inception. Remember to stay petty, dear viewership. This is very important. From here on, we will be discussing very little ancient history, as we all have taken a class or two in our lives, informing us how all that went down. And to be honest, apart from a few pertinent facts, that these beats remain the same. I will talk briefly about someone who is crucial to humanity's future, person who, without his guidance, we would have been lost to the darkness long ago. I am, of course, referring to the Emperor himself. According to some sources, we can put Big E's birth around 8000 BCE, or BC if you like it nasty. The man himself says he was born on the banks of the Sakarya River in Anatolia. So, for those that don't know, Anatolia is like mainland Greece, around the heartland of the Byzantine Empire back in the day, near Constantinople, if that helps.
Kind of.
Any eagle-eyed historian would know
Mm.
that this does, in fact, put him into a primitive Proto-Hittite civilization, given the timeline and geographical location. The ancient Hittites, you ever heard of them?
Yeah.
They're in the Bible. It's kind of hard to miss. It's not really known if this is the truth, as Big E was a bit of a kidder when it involved his past. But what we do know is that after witnessing the brutal murder of his father at the hands of his uncle, Big E understood that humanity needed a firm hand to guide them towards a better future. Setting out to chew ass and kick bubblegum. Wait, reverse that. Big E journeyed towards the first city of humanity. Along the way, he learned quite a bit about himself. First thing was that he possessed tremendous psychic power. The other thing was that he neither aged nor stayed dead after grievous injury. In time and studying, Big E would learn that he was what you'd call a perpetual. Perpetuals, as it turned out, was some evolutionary offshoot of humanity that only a handful of humanity ever achieved. In short, they were immortal beings that could wade through time. Now, we could go on and on about all this, but ultimately that is for a later topic. The takeaway from everything stated up to this point is Big E has been around for almost all of human history, skulking or bowed and subtly attempting to guide us in the right direction, while the Eldar mucked around the galaxy, filling up time doing raunchier and raunchier stuff. Any questions so far?
Well, more of like just the thing. I didn't know the Emperor was around that long. I thought he was more later on type of deal. Didn't realize he was like immortal, like that lived that long,
Now
or
remember,
was born back then.
in our previous episode, the War in Heaven episode, it was clearly stated that he was in fact Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
No, yeah. He's like, I'm Jesus.
I'm
Yeah.
Jesus, yay! I'm gonna try it this way. Let's see what happens. Yeah.
Oh, that didn't work. Oh, let's
Uh,
try something different now.
yeah, as I said before, it's older lore, but it checks out. They have yet to disprove that he was Jesus. So until that day, Jesus he shall be. But yeah, now he's been around a long time, about as long as the human race has been around. Obviously, we know that that's not true. We know how, generally speaking, how old our species is, and it's certainly older than 8,000 BCE. Moving on, as we travel through time from Big E's birth to around 1400 AD, or the Common Era, CE if you prefer, two things happen worth mentioning. The first thing of note is the birth of the Chaos Gods Korn, Zeech, and Nurgle. They all are born in and around this time, presumably as species across the galaxy kill, scheme, and grow sick and die. But the nature of the warp is speculative at best and confusing at worst. So let's not go down that rabbit hole yet.
Yet.
Don't worry, we'll get there. I'm going to have an episode dedicated to each of the dark gods of chaos, including all eight. Oh, yeah. We'll get there. Don't worry.
So there's 8 of them?
There are four primary, but yes, there are eight of them.
Okay, I knew the 4 primary, but I didn't know there was like 8 in total.
Yeah, it kind of was hinted at a very long time ago in the lore, and it was the Liber Chaotica that was mentioned. I want to say, you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, please. But there is eight aspects of nature, of emotional nature that gets
Mm,
covered by all of them, not just the prime four. But the prime four have taken up the major slots because they are, by and large, the most intense emotions in sentient spectrum, if that makes sense.
was it what I mean, does that mean they're all I mean, are they all evil or are there any good?
Well, I'm not a word bearer, so I'm not going to sell you on the neutral or perhaps even good aspects of the chaos gods, because it's felling malarkey. But it could be stated that the chaos gods, the prime ones, the four, while they do have bad things about them, there are a flip side of the coin, good things about them. Um, Trying to, figure okay, so, like, you know how Zeech, he's all about scheming and backstabbing and and all those things,
Hmm,
but he's also about unchecked ambition and cunning and being able to outsmart and outmaneuver your competition. It doesn't inherently have to be, like, violent, but most always it is, but, like, there are good aspects of the dark gods of chaos. But I
okay,
will remind you, they are called the dark gods of chaos.
okay. Well, I mean, like, if there's a dark gods of chaos, or I mean, it's a grim dark fantasy realm,
Yeah.
but, like, is there any history about, like, any type of, like, non-dark gods being born from the warp?
It's funny you should mention that because at the tail end of the Horus Heresy, which is the subject matter we will be covering in our next video, there was a moment in time that Big E almost ascended to be the fifth chaos god, the big fifth one. He was called the Dark King,
Mm,
and his whole thing was order and absolute power, which would make sense if you know the Emperor. But we're digressing a little bit. So the other thing I wanted to know during this time was the Eldar unlocking all the secrets of the Webway from the Slann before their culture died off. You will remember that the Slann were the lizardmen created by the Old Ones to steward their creations throughout the ages. Yeah?
hmm.
Remember that picture I showed you of the little lizard guy
Yeah,
that
yeah,
looked
yeah.
very much like the lizard folk from fantasy?
Yeah, yeah.
Same species, more or less. I don't know if there's a connection between fantasy and 40K, but we talked about that last time. Before this great species went silently into the good night, they imparted a warning to the Eldar. Something about idle hands. Honestly, the message got lost in translation in between the orgies, and odd torture sessions sprinkled in for good measure.
They're just all kinds of freaky.
Oh yeah, that's what they're known for at this point in time.
Just all the Eldar are just known to be freaky like that, or
I
what?
mean,
It's just
like, you have your detractors, just like, you know how you'll have, like, an entire society of, let us call them liberal hedonists, which is,
mm,
no political connotation, it's just the best way to describe that. But there's always gonna be, like, the ultra conservatives within any type of society like that.
mostly there's factions within society of, different
Exactly.
beliefs and
And
stuff like
in
that.
that instance, which we will cover more in our Eldar episode, the Craft World Eldar and the Exodites were like looking at that from the sideline, giving like strong side eye towards the ones that are like, no, you know what? We know the end is coming, but we're just going to double down. Let's get into our murder orgy phase. All the wild disco balls in the background, and then sashaying back and forth with weird tassel clothing. It's just like absolute madness, absolute madness. Um, so yeah, they unlock the mysteries of the webway before the Slan went. Uh, and the Slan prophetically is like, "Don't do this. Keep you're doing stuff. Quit doing it, or bad stuff's going to happen to you." And for the next 14,000 years, they're rather eventful for human history. In this time, we managed to terraform and colonize Mars and establish ourselves securely in the Sol system. Wasn't until around M15 or 15,000 AD or CE, if you prefer, by our reckoning, that humanity finally developed sublight technology and began colonizing nearby star systems. Many of these worlds took up to 10 generations to get to. When they did, the colonies were largely self reliant and had to fend for themselves. So, this mass exodus out of the Sol system would mark what historians would later call the Dark Age of technology or the Golden Age of exploration. In the following millennia, humanity would create many new and marvelous things. They would also begin to develop genetic offshoots of our species capable of adapting to different environments. And in the case of the navigator gene, a means to peer into the currents of the warp and plot courses in order to travel through it. Hence the name. And naturally, the invention of the warp drive in the Geller field, which was circa M18, precipitated this genetic engineering.
So I'm guessing like the jump in technology allowed humanity to like perceive the warp, or like, hey, there's something called the warp. Let's try to access it.
Yeah,
Like,
basically. So basically they created, and like from what I understand in the lore, for a couple thousand years up at that point, mankind was able to at least peer into the warp and understood that there was like a mirror universe that was of pure thought and emotion that they could see and theoretically fold and travel through. But see, they had very much like a moment in what's that movie called? Event Horizon. You ever see that movie?
I have not.
Oh, you're missing out. You should go watch it. So in Event Horizon, they create an engine of sorts that allows them to burrow through, kind of create like a wormhole tunnel to travel through another parallel realm of existence. And it just so happens in the movie that ends up being literal hell, Gehenna.
Yeah, yeah.
They bore a hole through hell to do faster than light travel, which is exactly the same thing in 40K. To the point where there's a lot of people that believe that's a non-official movie about the creation of the warp drive and realizing they needed to create a Geller field, which is kind of like a psychic bubble shield that protects you from the entities of and malicious intent of all the entities in the warp. But of course, they had to create the navigators, right? This is where the superior genetic engineering comes in. So, like, think of the navigator, they're the ones that have the third eye. Yeah. So these guys, they peer into the currents of the warp, and their whole purpose in life is to do that and then to course a path for warp capable space vessels to travel to and fro. Very dangerous. They burn out pretty consistently. They run a monopoly on it. If you know anything about Dune, they're basically the Spacers Guild. The only difference is they use the space melange to travel, as opposed to just being genetically altered to do the thing. Though I am by no means a Dune expert, please don't at me. I don't care that much. Now, The invention of the warp drive propelled humanity forward in ways that allowed our species to infest every corner of the galaxy. It still would take time to achieve this goal. However, and with this in mind, a group of superior beings referred to only as the Men of Gold created beings known only as the Men of Stone. Confused you? It's okay if
Are
you
they still in a gold out now?
see. The Men of Gold created the Men of Stone. Gold created stone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. From what sources are available, it can be speculated on that the Men of Gold were likely the group of beings that served in Biggie's inner circle. Side note, there were other perpetuals other than the Emperor. The details don't matter for this episode. Just know that there were several, and it is in this humble lore expert's opinion that the Men of Gold were these perpetuals. Again, these are basically immortal Highlander types that can never die. And I mean that quite literally. Like, there is, as far as I know, only two ways that you can kill a perpetual. One is with a fulcrite bladed object. And fulcrite is literally the Emperor's psychic focus lightning shooting into some stone, and then the stone being a weapon. And of course, the Dark Gods of Chaos, or any sizably powerful warp entity with that much psychic might that could just snuff you. It requires a lot of, go between middlemen to do it, but it has been done. Now, regardless, they created the Men of Stone to oversee colonization efforts for humanity in the Men of Gold's stead, because they weren't about ready to leave their palaces in the sky on Holy Terra to, do the plebe work. If you ask me, and again, this is just a speculative opinion, the Men of Stone were synthetic humanoids capable of resisting the pitfalls of generational colonization efforts. Yeah, say that 6 times fast. I think those synthetic life forms from the Alien franchise, and to me at least, that is the Men of Stone. I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion, as is most of in the speculative, I digress. Now, I only ramble on about this because, like their creators, the Men of Gold, the Men of Stone had a fatal flaw in the form of hubris and laziness. For the sake of convenience, the Men of Stone created, to help their colonization efforts, servants known as, are you ready for this? The Men of Iron.
Uh, the men of iron.
So,
Here to the men of copper.
we scaling down. First it was gold, then for some reason it's stone in the middle.
So hold on, wait. I assigned this job to you, then you made someone else and assigned that job to them. Then they decided to make someone else assign that job. Where do you all go wrong?
What is the point? Where does the blame that land to? Well, obviously the last generation, because it's always the young that make mistakes. Am I right, guys? Internet, am I right? It's always the young people's problem. And clearly always their fault. Boomer. As a side note, if I have any boomer fans out there, know that I love and cherish you and thank you for your patronage. And I also realize that that is merely a generalization and not a specialization in terms of understanding the human condition. I digress. The Men of Iron were, for lack of a better explanation, servile robots capable of advanced artificial intelligence and unlimited potential. Would you like to take a stab at what happened next?
Well, if they're like automatons, I'm like, the only thing that comes across is Necrons, but
No, 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 no,
aren't they like metally or
no, no, no. I mean, your heart's in the right.
am I thinking too far?
Your heart's in the right place, but I will remind you.
Oh, the Mechanicus?
Okay.
The Robo Boys, the guys that started modifying themselves?
I mean, they're kicking it around this time, but they are at this point in time not as they are currently. They haven't been created into a techno cult of worships machines, because what happens next is the exact catalyst that creates that society and many societies besides. So you hadn't guessed, which is to be expected. This is a lot of lore, but let me help you along at the guess. What happens when, in a lot of science fiction, mankind creates a servile robot race?
It gains its own self awareness and decides, hey, You guys are the problem. We're gonna take care of you.
You got it, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. While around M23, an event known as the Cybernetic Revolt kicks off, pitting the men of iron against all of humanity. Before that, in M22, a weird thing started happening to humanity. Now, maybe it was because our species being more involved with the warp, what with the traveling through it, or maybe we were going through some sort of evolutionary growth. Some members of our species began showing signs of psychic awakening. Across the settled system, psychers were popping up in alarming numbers. Naturally, every planet handled this situation differently. Some were forced into servitude by their new god kings, while others hunted them en masse like the witch hunters of old. Whatever the case may be, by M23 and by extension, the cybernetic revolt, psychers were common. Yeah. Now, the cybernetic revolt was a terrible time for humanity. It was a near apocalyptic event that saw humanity fighting a struggle for survival up until M25. During this conflict, many died, and horrific machines of unimaginable power were unleashed upon the galaxy by both sides. Eventually, humanity would prevail and destroy the Men of Iron to the last unit. This war would, in later generations, create a natural loathing and fear of artificial intelligence. So much so that from there on, all of humanity called AI abominable intelligence and outlawed their development. Never again would they allow thinking machines to dictate their fate. Now, do you know what a servitor is?
I believe so, yes.
Why don't you go ahead and give me a quick rundown of in your own words, what a servitor is?
I mean, my best idea what a server is, just from what I've seen, I guess,
Yeah, sure.
would be like that little like mechanical like floating skull that normally has like hang on and it's like glowy eye,
Y-
tells you stuff.
Okay. So yeah, we have servo skulls. We have
Server skull, I guess it'd be a different thing then.
what's this? I mean, it is a actual human being's hollowed out skull retrofitted with augmetics and thinking computation machines. But a servitor is someone who was a human being at one point that was, well, lobotomized and turned into a living machine, incapable of thinking or making actions for yourself, but still very much trapped in your own flesh and a lot of emotional and mental capacity. So if you played Dark Tide, right?
Yeah.
Remember the Medicaid station?
Yeah, yeah.
Remember that guy hanging in the middle of the Medicaid station with the weird Syrian stuff?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
That's a servitor.
Oh,
That
okay.
was a man once. And usually servitors are made into servitors because they did some heinous crime that warranted them being servidized or whatever we want to call it. Regardless, I tell you what a servitor is because when I mean that in that time period and onward, mankind does not use thinking machines, I mean that quite literally. They now use human beings as batteries, as computation machines, as everything that you can think of because they were that put off by artificial intelligence. And never again would we ascend to heights like we experienced in the dark age technology because we had machines that could be sent to a world and obliterate it in a matter of minutes. We're talking like a robot serpents that would literally go from planet to planet, just obliterating it like planet killer.
Okay.
Like we were
So, like, the whole, like, cybernetic revolt was, like, one of the main reasons for, like, humanity's downfall in their technology.
it,
From what I've seen, like, it basically got to a certain point,
we
like,
definitely had
the
a
technology's stagnant because it was, like, viewed like, well, I mean, for what I could tell, it was, like, viewed as, like, if you try to upgrade or, like, invent new things, it was like, "Oh, that's heresy. Stop that."
well, that is the Mechanicus's sorry, at that point it would have been the Mechanicum's purview to enforce such stricture, and that's their MO. More so, most cultures were just like, AI, they're abominable intelligence, and we don't trust them, and we are never going to mess with that kind of technology ever again.
Hmm.
And it just so happens that it played into a recession of intelligent thought process and innovation of technology.
Have the Men of Iron ever been like a play like the tabletop version of
Yeah,
Warhammer? Have the Men of Iron ever been like a playable race?
to my knowledge, no, but there have been miniatures.
Okay.
So like the first Gaunt's Ghost novel, there is a chaos infused Men of Iron unit that the Gaunt's Ghost encounter and defeat. And that's older lore, but and does it still check out? And it's kind of muddled, mainly because with the refresh of the Necrons and changing up how they were versus how they are now, which we will
Mm.
get into more when we do a deep dive episode on the Necrons just themselves. We'll get into that. But for now, just understand that the Men of Iron, they're pretty much gone. There are a couple instances in 40K's timeline of like in the 42nd millennium where there is an actual Men of Iron. Because that you do encounter a Men of Iron in like a novel. And it's really funny because they like chiseled off all of their insignia from like the dark age of technology, and they were playing themselves off as like a mindless automaton that could be controlled by a tech priest when it was actually a thinking machine with artificial intelligence.
Basically just trying to survive and
Yes, just
keep
driving
itself
through. Yeah,
keep itself hidden.
absolutely hilarious. We'll cover it one day. Um, but yeah, I think that's enough of a tangent. As if this terrible chapter was bad enough for good old humanity, unfortunately, the warp had other ideas. For reasons that will be explained in another episode, warp storms began appearing everywhere in the galaxy. With these storms came the inability of humanity to travel through the warp or communicate with all the worlds within their dominion. The Age of Strife had begun. And the Age of Strife, sometimes called Old Night, was a period that followed the dark age of technology, which, by the way, take a moment to dark age of technology. Like it's in the name. There's like the fall of our technological progress, very reminiscent of the Middle Ages, Dark Ages. Yeah. So,
Okay.
like the Roman Empire fell, and then we just started living in huts again. Some places, some other
Yeah.
places were having a golden age. Like the Islamic golden age comes to mind. They had like a good 3 to 500 years of just like technological progression that's worth noting, and their architecture, sublime, good
You
stuff.
think it'd be more called like the fall of the golden age, not the fall of the dark age, like
Well, with naming conventions isn't obviously us plebes' job. Just, we just look at the thing and go, "Ooh, shiny. What's the significance?" Also, I can't read. As I was saying, the Age of Strife, sometimes called the Old Night, was a period that followed the dark age of technology between M25 through M30. During this turbulent period, many worlds withered and died or were self sufficient enough to create pocket empires that lasted well into the Great Crusade. In general, it was a bad time to be human, as one terrible thing after another happened, and much was forever lost, never to be recovered. There are numerous suggestions as to why the Age of Strife happened. The first and obvious thing is the war against the Men of Iron. Makes sense. More than likely, though, it was the arrival of psychers throughout the settled worlds. More often than not, they were hunted and killed. And because of this, the population was spared the worst of it. But other worlds were accepting of these new men and sought to study them with the kind of curiosity usually reserved for children. These worlds would come to find that psychers are like a portal into the world. Demonic possessions happen, and chaos ensued like clockwork. Just imagine the worst demon popping into saying hello and tearing the fabric of reality in two, allowing bad things to come through and say hello on a galactic scale. Nothing was left, and humanity regressed to barbarism on most worlds. Now, on Terra, things were particularly bad. Entire nations of techno barbarians began to take over as the world withered into a dry husk as resources long stopped flying in due to old night. In this nightmare fueled world, a warlord rose to prominence, utilizing genetically engineered mutants to subjugate any who would oppose his will to dominate. I could guess who it was.
I'm guessing it was Big E.
Damn right it is. High five for excellence. Give me an air five. Ah, yeah. Viewership, he gave me an Air 5. It was glorious. Yeah, enter Big E. Around in 29, the Emperor finally revealed himself for all to see. Big E had noticed that the warp storms raging across the galaxy had finally begun to dwindle. And as such, it was time for humanity to be united once more. He then led his Thunder Warriors, the aforementioned genetic mutants, into several campaigns and eventually conquered Old Earth, Terra, whatever you want to call it. Along the way, his custodian guard, early units that would eventually make up the Imperial army, and even some proto-Astartes, were born to bring down any who opposed his dominion. To note, many campaigns occurred during this time, and I do not have the strength to list them all. Maybe one day we will tackle the Unification Wars in greater detail, but that day is not today. For now, just imagine the Emperor warring across old Earth before eventually having the entire planet under his thumb. The last major battle to occur during the Unification Wars was the Purge of Mount Ararat in 669 M30. So, for those of us not in the know, and I'm going to go ahead and assume Chef here is not in the know. The way that they read imperial dates is they'll first do the year. Well, okay, I'm grossly oversimplifying the calendar. Please understand that I understand. I'm just basically it goes year and then M whatever millennia it is.
Hmm.
So if it's 669 M30, it's 30,669th year. Make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. In this battle, the Emperor lured his remaining Thunder Warriors to Mount Ararat, where he used his custodian guard and proto-Astartes to massacre the unstable genetic soldiers to a man. In this rare instance, we know why the Emperor purged his own soldiers. It basically came down to two factors. The first was the fact that the Thunder Warriors suffered from organ failure and other ailments due to their hasty engineering. The other was the fact that due to the first issue, their minds began to slip, and their brutality and bloodthirsty nature was becoming an issue. Regardless, after this purge, it cleared the next stage in transhuman super soldier evolution. Astartes legions had finally arrived, and in the remaining years of the Unification War began to establish the cultures and traditions they would carry until their eventual reunion with their Primarchs.
Those are the Emperor's sons, right? The
Yes,
Primarchs?
yes. They're the big guys that,
Are they actually his sons or like
absolutely, okay. They're test tube babies.
oh just test tube babies? I
But
was like, who's the mother?
But see, the two genetics, the two genetic samples that were used to make them came from the Emperor and another perpetual by the name of Urza. That was the female side of that creation
Okay.
methodology. And we will get into Urza later in greater detail. Like an associate of the Emperor. The Emperor has, as far as I know, only one friend, and that was Malkador.
Okay.
They were bros for life. Everybody else was a pawn.
So early to hey, give me your eggs. What?
I mean, yeah.
I need to make sounds, damn it. Give me your eggs.
He's like, hey, listen, I got this crazy idea. I need to make 20 kids that are going to be the bright and shining future of humanity and also its warlords. Wait, what was that? No, nothing. Bright future for humanity. Did you just shorten that? Humanity.
Humanity.
All right, you get it. He loves humanity. He loves humanity more than he loves himself, and certainly more than he loved his sons, as will become apparent when we do deep dives for all of the Primarchs that are listed.
Primarchs.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time, let me tell you. Some of them are real gems, Let me tell you.
Oh.
So the Astartes had arrived, were doing the whole ass and bubblegum thing, and the Primarchs were nowhere in sight because they haven't been found yet. After the last warlord on Terra had been defeated, in that same year, which at that point would have been 702 M30, the Emperor landed on Luna, the moon, and executed a swift campaign to secure the gene labs and other facilities therein. With none left to oppose his will, the emperor began spreading his imperial truth across the planet. Atheism began to take root at his behest, and all churches were destroyed until religion and superstition was stamped out of the human population. By 712 M30, the unification wars were declared over. All left on Terra, apart from some inconsequential holdouts, now acknowledged the emperor as their sovereign and bent the knee. After several decades of consolidation in which the emperor secured the allegiance of the Mechanicum of Mars, a massive fleet was created to ferry his legions across the stars. In 798 M30, so we're jumping timelines pretty consistently now, the emperor, with untold legions at his back, declared the beginning of the Great Crusade. This would be a 200-year galactic conquest to unify all of humanity. But we will talk about this next time. So, Chef, got any thoughts or questions? Now's the time. It isn't exactly like the formatting of before.
Yeah.
We could afford a tangent here because I just dropped a lot of stuff on your lap, and I'll be more than glad to clear some things up for you.
Well, I don't know if I didn't really need anything clear up. It's pretty easy to understand for the most part. Um, like I said, like me and anything I don't really question about is more of we're gonna cover in later
No,
episodes.
no, go by all means ask it. I'll give you brief snippets. I won't go into too much detail, but like if you have a thought, shoot it.
So I guess in this time, he wasn't viewed as the god emperor yet. He was just like the sovereign of Earth. Like,
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about the imperial truth because that got brought up at the end, and I'm sure that's
I mean, what exactly is the imperial truth?
so. It's an idea that there are no gods, and the only truth in the universe is science and rationality. And I am paraphrasing the crap out of that, but that is basically the gist there. The emperor wanted humanity to rationalize everything and to explain it away scientifically. Now, there is a theory as to why he did this. It is important to note at this point in history, galactic history, that is, that one of the predominant species left that can feed negative emotions to the dark gods of chaos was humanity. Humanity and the Eldar. And of course, every lesser race. But the Emperor had this crazy idea that if he made the entire human race not think gods were real, that it would starve out the dark gods of chaos.
I mean, reasonable, I guess, but
It sounds good on paper, right?
sounds good on paper.
But the problem with that is that when you follow that kind of logic, you're missing one very crucial thing about it, which is where is the defense towards the evil thing when the evil thing does decide to show up? Because you'll find in a lot of events in the Horus Heresy, people were not equipped to handle demon incursions of any kind because they had been raised their entire lifetimes to believe and feed into the idea that demons did not exist. And then when they manifest and prove their existence, it goes terribly,
Oh,
like
maybe so.
very badly. A lot of scenes play out, like Horus Rising, which is the first book in the Horus Heresy series. There's literally a scene where a, a group of humans and a handful of Astartes encounter a demon that managed to possess somebody and was running amok the way that demons usually do when they possess somebody. And they had no experience. They were not mentally or emotionally equipped to handle that. And like a lot of people had diverting paths that forever dominated them in arguably negative ways because like demons corrupt. It's what they do. Yeah, no, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It was an interesting question. It was basically Biggie. He was like, if I get them to stop being superstitious and quit playing into, worshiping gods and goddesses, knowing full well that when they're doing that, they're indirectly feeding the dark gods, maybe I'll make them weaker and then I'll be able to handle them myself. Or some silly logic like that.
Hmm. Well, if he believed in getting humanity to like gods are real, believe in science and stuff, how did he become known as the God Emperor? How did like people start seeing him as a god?
That's a long story, buddy. That's a real long story. I'll give you the short answer. He was put into a position where he couldn't smack people for being stupid.
Hmm.
And in lieu of him being such a phenomenally powerful psyker, mankind fell back on the thing that we always do. When we can't explain something, we end up either being afraid of it or we venerate it. It's like History 101 with our species, like with a fear of the unknown and the worship of the stupid.
Yeah,
Um,
makes sense.
yeah, and he never wanted that.
I'm
Literally,
guessing this is after he got bound to the
yeah,
chair,
yeah.
right?
And I can tell you this, everybody knows this, but during the end of the Horus heresy, him and Horus, Lupercal, his favored son, war master of his armies, had a duel. And while he completely destroyed Horus and removed him from existence utterly, he was in turn severely injured, and nobody knew he was a perpetual. So they didn't know that, like, if you just let the poor man die, he'll come back completely regenerated. Nobody knew he was a perpetual because the only person that did was dead by then, which was his bestest buddy in the entire world, Malcador the hero. So yeah, it was one of those unfortunate tragedies where they're like, "Oh my god, we need to keep him alive. Let's strap him to this chair. Also, if we don't keep him on this chair, demons are going to pour into Terra, and we can't have that." It's a whole thing. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about it later.
So, like, they could literally just let the emperor die. He'd come back to normal, like, "God, you should have let me die, like, way back then.
Yeah,
What's wrong with
but
you?"
they strap him to the machine, and it's too late. And now, for 10,000 years, he has sit immobile as a corpse god, being worshipped and venerated as a god. And I will remind you, the way that 40K works is that thought equals action and power. So by having trillions of human beings throughout the galaxy believing he is a god, he became a god. They orcified the poor bastard. And he never wanted that. He hated gods and the concept of false worship. He destroyed entire planets for less. Yeah. He's a salty dude, by the way. Old me off. He's a salty guy. All right. Got the juices flowing.
I wonder if they're ever gonna, like, have a point where, like, he actually does die, he's no longer in the chair, and he finally gets to revive and be like, "Hey, I'm back."
Okay, so remember when I said that like they were afraid a portal from hell was going to take over Terra?
Mm,
So there is this event called the War in the Webway. During the heresy, I won't go into too much detail because it involves the famous boy that did nothing wrong punching a hole into the reality of Terra and making it so demons could pour through. So the Astronomicon, the Golden Throne, is a singular device that is being used by the psychic power of Big E to plug that hole. So he has to sit there forever. Because if he does not, demons will pour into Terra and kill everything. And then the heart of mankind will be ripped out. So even if they
well, I
wanted
mean,
to,
well, how long do like, okay, let's theoretically, if he were to, like, die so he could be reborn again, the hole would open, like, how long does it take for a perpetual to revive themselves?
depends on the manner of their destruction and power level. Sometimes it's instantaneous, sometimes it's a couple minutes, sometimes it's a couple hours, and sometimes it's a couple years. It really depends.
Like, 'cause I know in the worst situation, a couple years, yeah, Tara would be gone, but, like, if it's instantaneous, he could be like, "Hey, I'm alive. Replug that hole."
I'm afraid it's not as simple as that, unfortunately, because we do know, because it's been stated in the lore that the moment that the Astronomicon is no longer powered is the moment that that hole tears into reality and becomes like a supernova level of massive, and the demons just pour in, and it's game over. There has to be somebody with his power level of psychic power on that chair at all times. And to date, there has been no one living from our species powerful enough to do that. There aren't even Eldar that can do it, and they're known for their psychic power.
Mhm. Yeah, because my first thought would went to, like, one of his sons, but
Okay, funny you should mention that because the dear boy that did nothing wrong, Magnus, he was supposed to be that guy. He was supposed to be the man that sits in the chair, and he was going to do that for the rest of his unnaturally long lifespan until he made another version of Magnus and put him on the chair. And so it goes. But alas, the heresy happened, and he had to work with a couple broken eggs, basically. And it's is an interesting tangent to get into because if you want my honest opinion, Magnus did everything wrong, but his intentions were pure. He did everything wrong, but he had a good heart towards what he was doing. But he's the reason why there was a warp hole in the first place. Because right before the War Master turned Horus, he went bad. Magnus was basically talking with him. He's like, "My dude, these are demons that are trying to convince you to do a bad thing." Horus is like, "Well, it's either the demon you know or you don't know, and I'd rather know these demons and just take their side." I'm like, "You're an idiot, but that's neither here nor there. I'm gonna go tell dad." And then he tries to tell dad psychically, and he can't get through this barrier that's guarding the planet. And he's like, "I must tell dad that Horus has betrayed him." And then this little tentacle blue guy just come out of nowhere, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, want to break that barrier? I can help you do it. I can give you the power you need. I'd love to help you. You're right. Daddy needs to know. Want to take my power? You know you do. Don't focus on the eyes. I have like a million of them. Don't do it. Like you. Okay, pick one.
just pick
Yeah,
one.
pick one.
Pick one.
Pick one. Don't stare at my tentacle. That's rude. All right, you take on my power or not, you weirdo. And he takes the power. And by the way, that was Zeech that did that.
Yeah.
And then he breaks through the barrier, and then the rest is history. And now there has to be a man in the chair.
Gotcha.
It's a long-winded way of saying bad stuff happened, but that's the Horus heresy. We will totally be talking about all of that next time. Before we leave off here, do you have any other questions? Any comments even? Any some, insight from a non-super fan in the super fan franchise?
So as someone who's like very little experience with like this whole reason I'm doing this because I have very little knowledge or you say what stuff like with
Got it.
40,
Unpopped cherry. We're working on it.
with 40K. It's just like I'm not, and plus I'm not really used to just grim dark stories to begin with.
Yeah.
Where everything is just like, hey, everything is bad and it's always going to be bad. There's nothing good. Life sucks here.
Yeah. There are heroes, but everybody's a villain.
Exactly.
There is
It's like,
no
well,
good faction in 40K. And if people tell you that the Tau are a good faction, tell them to go eat a big pea because they're wrong and they deserve every
What's wrong with
bit
the
of
Tau?
rage and hate that can exist in
It's hell.
the Tau. Okay, so apart from the fact that they're very obviously manipulative in a very bad way. Like, okay, there's this species called the Vespid, right? They couldn't, and the Vespid are basically flying insects with like 6 eyes. They look
Makes sense.
disgusting. They can't talk to the Vespid. They're like talking to them about the greater good. You want to join the greater good, this, greater good, that. Have you tried our greater good Kool-Aid brand Kool-Aid? It's better than great. It's good. And the Vespid were just like flying around shooting them. So finally they get this idea is like, I think we need to be able to communicate with them on their level. So we're going to figure out these helmets that they can wear that will be given to their leaders to help them communicate with us. So the Vespid leaders got the helmets. And suddenly communications began. And you know what? They really like that Tau Greater Good. They like it than most should, in fact. Yeah. At me. I don't care, Tau players. You all suck. Just kidding. Love you. Like the boomers. I'm just shit posting everybody. I actually, my first army was a Tau army. I'm just messing with you. Well, it's technically not true. My first army was an orc army, and then it was a Tau army because I'm a weeb and I love giant mechs. They're cool.
Mm.
Sold every time. And they do have really cool models, but their entire concept of living and everything sickens me to the core. And the only way an American can be sickened, and thus they must be destroyed.
Hmm.
Anything else?
Uh, no, just as someone who's not used to the grim dark and like not used to these type of stories, it's like it's interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, I've read all kinds of different like fairy tales. I've tried to run like even like I even had you in like a grim dark, somewhat grim dark uh game I ran that wasn't so grim dark. It was like putting a toe in more than anything.
Yeah, I think you're not giving yourself enough credit because that was a lot of fun. It was plenty enough dark. There was dark scenes in that campaign. You know, the whole context, guys. I was basically playing a guy who was like he was the big bad wolf. He was the big bad wolf. Niklaus Wolf, because originality is dead. And he was basically a hybridized character of the Big Bad Wolf from Red Riding Hood, and also he was the hunter from Snow White.
Yeah, and for more context, the game I was running was a dark Disney game where all my characters, the people playing in my campaign, were all based on fairy tale people.
And he did, for the most part, lean more into the Brothers Grimm fairy tales than the Disney aspect.
Yeah, yeah.
We just sprinkled some Disney in because my what's called girlfriend at the time was really into that stuff. And plus, you know, we all like Disney here. I'm not ashamed to admit that. Um, hell, Tekonis over here may or may not had a stint in Disney World for a time.
Yeah, for a little bit.
Yeah. But such as it is, like, you know, it was good. You're giving yourself too little credit. You should I even told you at the end of that entire campaign that you achieved something that I very unlikely will never be able to achieve just because of the singular focus and the creativity behind it. And I still applaud you to this day, as well as should everybody. I really wish we had some sort
I
of
know.
archival.
I'm hoping I haven't come up with a decent story yet, but I
Mhm.
know future down the road, I do want to run a 40K campaign.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how well it'll go. I definitely this lorecast is definitely going to help me with that.
Oh yeah.
But like eventually, maybe run a campaign on the page because right now we're running our other RP session right now.
Yes, with Decurio
Yeah,
Chamlin.
with Decoria Chamlin, where he's the DM currently. And maybe future down the road, I can run a
Yeah.
short series that's in the 40K universe, and we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah, no, and I look forward to it. I mean, it couldn't be any worse
Have a
than
cramping good time.
nothing good time. I told Shanlon the other day behind the scenes is like, man, we did a one shot where we were all playing orcs and like I want an entire
It'd be
campaign.
so
I
fun.
want an entire campaign of that just being us being
Just orcs.
silly little orc goobers. Uh, so it was I was playing the Green Knight.
Go North. I don't know.
Uh,
I can't remember what I was playing.
I don't remember either. I think you had like one of those side characters that he kind of just filled in the slot for. But with me, like the orc I was playing, he saw Lionel Johnson just tearing into a bunch of orcs. And he was just all like, that's the right there, so crumping. He's big, he's green, he's mean. I'm gonna be just like him. He just started like taking scraps of metal and just approximated a plate armor suit and painted it green, and he became the Green Knight. It was great. It was a crumping good time. I recommend it.
It was good.
So yeah, you know, the thing about 40K's grimdark genre, and unlike most genres, it's important to straddle the line between the Pyrrhic victories of a grimdark setting, but also the heroic actions of the everyman. So, like, if you want a really good series to read set in 40K's grimdark setting that encapsulates like the Pyrrhic victory, but also the heroic struggle of genuinely decent people, look no further than Gon's Ghost, for real. Gon's Ghost is highly recommended because if you were to read that or even listen to the audio formatting version of it, yeah, because you know I know you work and you,
Yeah.
um,
I got a bunch of other little side projects I'm always constantly working
yeah,
on and stuff
that's
like
some good
that.
stuff. Like, because I think that especially as you really get into the Sabbath World Crusades, it starts to really show you is like this is what 40K is. Dan Abnett does an amazing job of just like painting that mind picture for you.
Okay.
As writers go, he's very, very good.
I'll have to check it out.
Please do. Maybe you know you'll be a guest in book club, and we'll read one of those books one day. But
Maybe.
after your first idea, of course.
Of
So
course.
Something with the salamanders, I think. Last I talked with you, anyway.
Oh yeah, I was wanting to like read a book on or something based on the salamanders because there are the space marine factions I tended to drift towards.
My
And
brother in my brother in Christ, have you seen the Blood Angels? Allow me to take the next 6 hours to tell you why they're much cooler than the salamanders.
yeah, I like salamanders. I like they use fire. So much fire.
Everybody uses fire. Whatever. My
But makes me up for the little guy, damn it.
So do the Blood Angels.
Yeah.
They also like their blood, but that's only some of them. Some of them be like, "Hey, buddy, you look good enough to eat."
The only other faction I like is the Raven Guard.
Raven Guards. No, that makes sense for you. Raven Guard's really cool because Corvus Corax, their Primarch, was arguably one of the coolest Primarchs ever.
Oh, so goth.
He is.
Edgelord.
He is. I don't think he's an edgelord. I believe that goes to Conrad Kurz of the Night Lords. That dude is 100% that kid in Hot Topic. That's Conrad Kurz.
Yeah, definitely.
Are you good? Do you have anything else you want to get off your chest?
As for that, I don't have anything else.
Well, Chef, thanks again for joining me in this Lorecast episode. It's always a pleasure. Tune in next time as we discuss the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. This has been Decurio Iomhar, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Have a good one, guys.